Welcome back. So South Africa will soon close down at least 10 diplomatic missions in an effort to save costs, coupled with a budget cut for the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. These are some of the issues contained in the department's budget vote speech that was delivered by the minister before Parliament yesterday. Pandor has also highlighted a wage bill that exceeds the budget as another issue that needs urgent attention if the department's financial woes are to be addressed. Well, we're very lucky to have the Minister with us this morning to discuss this and, of course, as many issues as we can. Minister, wonderful to have you. Welcome. Thanks for being our guest.
Morning, Leanne, and morning to your viewers. Morning to Sakina as well. Assalamu alaikum, Sakina.
Thanks very much to you, Minister. So, Minister, this quite a big announcement coming from you that 10 diplomatic relations are going to be shut for South Africa, obviously due to cost reductions. Talk us through those missions and how the decision came about for those specific ones to be shut.
Well, let me confess that this was one of the first times that I had to cry in the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. Because it is a very painful conversation to have with your colleagues when you inform them of the decision that your government has taken due to economic constraints and constraints that have been worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, I think it's not all doom and gloom because South Africa has one of the largest diplomatic footprints in the world. We have 122 missions. And we're closing 10, so we will have 112. And of course, we will continue to look at the advisability and the cost effectiveness of that large footprint, which we regard as important. The missions that will be closed will be our mission in Belarus, in Minsk. They will be supported by our mission in Moscow, which is not too far away from Minsk. Then there's Port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago. We will utilize our High Commission in Jamaica to continue the established relations there. Then the Holy See in the Vatican. Yeah. The mission in Helsinki in Finland. We're well represented in Scandinavia and will ensure that we do maintain very strong links with a very important friend and partner to South Africa. And then Milan in Italy, which is a consulate. It's not a full embassy. We do have an embassy in Rome, and clearly Rome is going to take on the obligation to ensure that Milan continues to be a contact point. It's a very important industrial base for us. And then Muscat in Oman, the embassy in Fiji, the embassy in Romania, in Bucharest will be closed. Lima in Peru, as well as our consulate in Chicago. We'll continue to have a consulate in New York, a consulate in Los Angeles, and of course, we have permanent representation at the United Nations through a full ambassador.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's quite a list. However, I can imagine that there's a lot of work that goes into it. You don't just close the door and walk away and say, well, thanks so much, we're leaving now. I mean, this comes with a lot of tying up of loose ends. And how does this work? When are these closures expected?
Well, we've begun the process because it's quite an involved process. So we've begun this year. There were heads of mission whose contracts end this year. And so it's a smooth transition that we're working on. Others may be of longer duration, so it might be into next year. But in this financial year, these 10 will be closed.
All right. So when you say this financial year, is there a possibility that we may see more missions closing in the next financial year?
I hope not, but that depends on us succeeding in the other areas of cost saving that we have identified. I mentioned yesterday that we are looking at the restructuring of the department. We have far too many posts that are unfunded. And so our compensation of employees budget is, just not able to meet our wage bill costs. And so we overspend in that area every year. So we've got to address that. And then property management is an area where we're going to do a lot of work. I mentioned in Parliament that we will be disposing of some properties overseas, some in Europe, that have remained unoccupied and yet are very valuable estate for us. So we'll be looking at that. There are a whole lot of measures that we have to take. But in addition, we will use either good friends in the 10 countries or South Africans living there permanently as honorary consuls. It's an option we can utilize. Many countries do with respect to South Africa. And it's something we've not done fully, and I think we should make much more use of that.
Yeah, I have seen that being common practice with many countries that do that, so that they can assist if there is a main mission in an embassy or a consulate in another city. You will have a representative somewhere that can help with that. So that may be one of the solutions. I want to get back to the wage bill, because this seems to be a problem in every single department at the moment. I mean, this is not an anomaly in your department. This is something that every department is complaining about, that the wage bill is too heavy. So I suppose one needs to ask this: are there job cuts perhaps on the horizon? I mean, if these are wages or positions that have not been accounted for in the budget, where does that leave you?
No, I don't want to lose a single person from DIRCO. We have a really excellent crop of men and women, but we do need to get our structure right. There are far too many very senior positions which are very expensive. I'd like to create room for movement for young staff to grow in the department. So it's adjustments that we have to make to right size and ensure that those who have management responsibility have the competence to execute that responsibility well, and those who have the potential to be senior managers have room to move up the ranks. So it's a right sizing, really, and ensuring that when people retire, if a post has not really proven to be one that we should maintain, then we will not re-advertise it and look at critical areas that are of essence for a department like ours. So it's to do things right, Leanne, really, and also not have so many posts, because often the inability to meet your costs arises from aspirational structures rather than a reality, which is the kind of structure you should have.
Minister, one of the other quite I suppose it always is a topic that gets a lot of reaction, and that, of course, is the issue of Israel and Palestine. We woke up this morning to seeing that there has been a ceasefire called, a truce, and hopefully this will see a lot more peace in the area, because the lives that have been lost and the devastation that has been witnessed by us over these last couple of days has been absolutely devastating. But again, this was a topic you brought up. Let's talk about South Africa's stance on this whole issue.
Well, Leanne, we've not been observing this for the past couple of days. It's for decades now. The people of Palestine have been suffering this kind of brutal onslaught for many, many decades. They're killed. There's a great deal of horror in the world, and then suddenly there's this ceasefire. I regard it as cynical, what we're seeing, and really I believe that the world, in particular the United States of America, have to do much more to ensure that the people of Palestine enjoy peace and freedom. So the great powers of the world bear a huge responsibility, and what was shocking is how long it took the Security Council to actually deliberate on this matter, to the degree that the General Assembly initiated its own debate. I mean, really. So it's deja vu. It's shocking that this could happen, and is judged by some as an attempt by Prime Minister Netanyahu to assert a hawkish character so that he's then called on again to try to establish a government, and to lose lives because of such cynicism. It's absolutely disgraceful. We should have a different outcome for the people of Palestine.
I know that you have, as on behalf of South Africa, again, thrown weight behind the International Criminal Court, saying that there should be an investigation into human rights abuses by the Israeli government.
There is already an investigation following a report by Human Rights Watch. So we are saying that the world should support the ICC in this work, because really there should be accountability. If one country abuses, as we're seeing, Palestine being abused, and this doesn't in any way diminish the loss of lives in Israel, but it is the people of Palestine who have people entering their homes and saying, move out. I'm taking over your home. Yeah. I'm taking over your land. It's not anyone else. I mean, we know about forced removals in South Africa, and for this to still be happening in the 21st century is just disgraceful.
Minister, moving on to another issue, I've got two more that I want to bring up with you, is the Summit on Financing African Economies that was recently held in France. You were there. Talk to us. How would you describe it from your perspective? A lot of people speaking to, and perhaps you can add this within your answer, is, why is it that African nations need to go to the Western world to tell us how to spend our money? I'm sure you may have seen some of these criticisms being leveled against a lot of the dignitaries that went there, but perhaps you can explain to us how this actually works.
Well, I don't think that the Western world is inviting Africans to tell them how to spend their money. I do believe very firmly that more of such meetings should take place on the African continent. And I've been conveying this to various heads of state whenever I can bite their ear. But I think this was an effort by France to really act on the work that was begun by President Ramaphosa as chair of the African Union when he appointed special AU envoys on economic recovery, whose task was to meet various international institutions and significant funders and investors on the African continent to call on them to agree to a debt standstill and to the identification of new funding that would assist African countries to invest in their economic recovery. So France was taking on, in a very deliberate fashion, this task and assisting the continent through calling a forum that included African leaders, but also key leaders in Europe, the United States, who would then talk about what should be done and what they believe can be done to assist us in identifying this new opportunities for funding that would assist our countries, which are hard hit by the pandemic, to have liquidity in order to invest in re-energizing our economies. So I thought it was a genuine effort by President Macron and his team. And the discussion did move somewhat toward a more positive consideration of this call for special drawing rights on the reserves that exist within the International Monetary Fund. There are aspects of the discussion that we don't agree with, and President Ramaphosa made this clear in his contributions. But I think the focus on the special drawing rights, which both the special envoys as well as African countries have been calling for, was a good step forward. I feel the amount that is mentioned in the statement is far too little. We would like to see more. But the fact that this is now an accepted phenomenon is a very important step forward.
Minister, I have to wrap it, but if I can, I know that it's very difficult but it is a big story. The issue of the development with the land that was bought in New York, and I mean, you yourself called it an absolute embarrassment for the piece of land that was paid 118 million rand. We saw the story coming out a few months ago, and this, of course, is all related to overspending. Any developments on this particular case? I know the DG was suspended. Anything more to report on this?
Well, the DG was suspended and is charged. The CFO is suspended and is charged. Money was paid, but there was no land. See, this notion of 118 million for land, there was 118 million is out, but there is no land.
Minister, we got to leave it there.
And when the cases are concluded, we shall, make a public statement on them.
Minister, thank you. Thank you very, very much for that. Gosh, 118 million rand just gone. Minister, thanks very much for the update. That's Minister Naledi Pandor. Imagine that, Sakina. 118 million rand and no land. Because that was the whole thing. They said paid 118 million rand for a small piece of land. Doesn't even exist.
And then we spoke about it on the show previously, but you see, and that is the type of emphatic leadership that you want in instances such as these.
Suspended.
It is what it is. There is no land. Let's not even talk about land. There was no land. It's 118 million rand gone. Nothing to show for.
And I mean,
end of story.
The budget for the whole of international relations cut by 500,000. I mean, that's 120 million rand that could have been. Some of those missions could have possibly remained open. Anyway, we've got to say goodbye. There's like 2 seconds left of the program.
We do.
Thank you. See you again on Monday morning.